Thank you, Randy. Well, welcome back, everybody. We're super glad that you're here, and we're back with our Webinar Wednesdays here in 2021. We've got the whole band back together, or should I say the community back together, and we're going to have a really great discussion. So we'll go ahead and get started. One of the most important things to make this discussion fruitful is to have you as the community be involved. So I want to encourage you to do that via the questions and answers section of the WebEx events here. So you'll see in the bottom right-hand screen, there's potentially a little collapsed thing that says Q&A. And if you click on that, you'll see that questions and answers are available there, where you can type in a question and send that in. And then we'll bring that up as we're talking today with Jon, or if it's something else that's more specific, we'll address it right back in there so you can get an answer. So please be sure to participate in that. Today's session is a little bit different than normal in that it's going to be 60 minutes in length. That is 60 minutes in length, and we're going to do our best to keep to that, but still have a really engaging discussion. And that's really what today is a community discussion. We're going to talk about best practices. We're going to have those questions and answers from you in the audience. And we also understand that there could be members of the press or the public viewing. We'd like to invite any members of the press just to drop a little note into the questions, just with your name and the publication you might be from. And if there's anything that you decide that you'd like to use from today's session, we do ask that you just reach out to us. We'll make sure that we can connect you with the right individuals to chat more about that and help you out as much as we can. If this is your very first Webinar Wednesday that you're attending, we want to welcome you. This is just a great bi-weekly gathering of attraction industry experts to discuss current challenges and how do we position our attractions for success. So we have a range of topics that we talk about, but it's really about kind of sharing great ideas and working through kind of problems that we might be facing in the industry. Over the past year, we've actually had about 23, 24 of these discussions. What you see on the screen right now is kind of just the list of those titles, but we do have recordings of all of those sessions available. If you look at something and you say, hey, I'd really like to learn a little bit more, you're welcome to go back and visit any of these and learn from one of the many experts that we've been able to talk with. So there's been over 65 great industry professionals that have shared their thoughts and how they've been managing this time of late. So wealth of information, and we got a wealth of information to come in this new year, starting it off really grand with today's discussion.
Yeah, Matthew, hey, good to see you again. And hi, everyone. So excited to see you. I can see a lot of people already joining the chat and saying hello. It's good to see all your I was about to say faces, but I would say your names. So we're really excited to be back. And we have a great set of offerings coming up. So these are the upcoming sessions. First of all, like Matthew said, go and check out our other programming you want. It's all there. And then upcoming wise, we have a great session in 2 weeks. We're all getting ready to reopen and have spring break. So that's going to be on Wednesday, February 17th. Learning from other industries. We've got some great folks lined up, possibly to learn from the restaurant industry, from other tourism industries, even airlines and airports. So that's really exciting. And then we are really, really excited and honored to be a part of the International Women's Day. So we have a special webinar on March 10th, and we don't want you to miss that. So make sure you sign up there for, I guess, St. Patrick's Day. We have the pot of gold at the end of this journey, looking for those silver linings and those gems that have come out of this COVID pandemic. What are we going to take away, and what are those silver linings, and then what are the future of membership pass programs? That's going to be at the end of March. So that's our February and March lineup. We are excited to have you join us for our upcoming webinars. Quick introductions. If this is new, Matthew Hohenstein is my partner here in our Webinar Wednesday series. He's our destinations principal here at Gateway. Wealth of knowledge. He started working at Universal Studios, I don't know, 12-year-old, 13, Matthew, I don't know when it was.
It was 16. I tried at 15 and wanted an age discrimination lawsuit when they didn't hire me, but had to wait till 16.
Well, in California, I was able to start as I think I was a 14-year-old working at Wild Rivers Water Park. So I've been in this industry for a while. California native. This is me, Randy. I work with our wildlife and conservation teams, but I have a great, strong affinity for all things Southern California and water parks. And Knott's Berry Farm. It's a place that's near and dear to my family's history. But I won't go into that so much right now. But we are super excited to have Jon Storbeck joining us today. Jon is the Vice President and General Manager of Knott's Berry Farm. He's been there since May of 2016. Is that right, Jon?
That is correct.
2016. And I knew Jon back in the day at Disneyland Resort, where he worked for, gosh, over 30 years, I believe.
Yep.
So the attractions industry has been part of your life for since the beginning, it seems, as well. So also, are you a Southern California native, Jon? Are you from?
I am. I'm a Southern California native. I grew up about 20 minutes from where I am right now. So I didn't venture far.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, we're going to hear more about Jon in a bit as he does an introduction, and we've got some questions lined up that we'd like to talk to him about. But we're really excited to have Jon join us today. Behind the scenes, Bill D'Angelo is here. Hey, Bill. Bill helps us out with any tech issues. If you have any questions, he's going to do his best to answer. If you want some clarification or request a link that was discussed, Bill will be sending that off for you. So we always start with a little bit of an industry update. We're going to keep it pretty brief this time along because we only have an hour and we want to spend as much time with Jon as possible. But we have to talk about reopenings. Obviously, there's a lot going on with reopenings. It seems that if we all remember, let's talk about California a little bit. But back in December, there was really an unprecedented rise of COVID cases and hospitalizations. And then, California went into another pretty stringent shutdown. Places that were open, Aquarium of the Pacific, the zoo, San Diego, Oakland, and all these locations, including, areas like Knott's Berry Farm that had its outdoor programs, they all had to pretty much shut down, and it was a significant issue for the attractions community in California. But just on January 25th, California lifted its stay-at-home orders, and shortly to follow, we are starting to see these attractions reopen. SeaWorld has announced its reopening schedule. I believe they just set up their dates for reopening. The San Diego Zoo reopened last weekend. I do know Aquarium of the Pacific reopened this last weekend as well. I was talking to my friend Jon over there. They were seeing over 3,000 people attend, a mad rush of people to make reservations and get their attractions up and running as California lifted the stay-at-home order. Along with that, dining rules and regulations were eased and lifted. And we're starting to see that trickle down into other communities as well in other regions. A lot of people will say as California goes, so do the other areas, and some of those states that were previously locked down or had more stringent rules are starting to loosen up as well along the same timeline. Minnesota, there's a lot. Obviously, we have a lot. I'm looking here. We have a lot of folks from the museum community. Obviously, museums are having a little tougher go during the lockdowns with the indoor space and exhibition halls. And we know that many museums have altered course. They've obviously done reservations differently, smaller, more intimate sessions, virtual programming. But we are starting to see those museums reopen with a little bit more ease of the COVID restrictions. Specifically, this is an article here, and we'll send all these links to you, by the way. That's also something I should have mentioned. Matthew and I send out an email after our webinars. Every link that you see here will send off to you, and then we will have this presentation available as well. But this is a good read about some of the ease of restrictions in some of those museums in some areas. Anything to add there, Matthew?
Well, I mean, I think one of the things that's been most notable since we took our little siesta here is that we now have vaccines out in the world. Now, we obviously have a very small percentage of the population. I think in the state of California right now, it's only 1.5% of the folks are actually fully vaccinated, and the same number is about here in Florida. But it is good, and it's kind of those first steps to, again, what we think is going to get us back to more typical interactions. But obviously with that, it also introduces some new questions maybe into how we're operating. Now, if I come to the attraction and I have been vaccinated, does that mean I don't have to follow certain of the procedures or rules that were in place now? So obviously that's one of the things that we got to think of and start being prepared for. We've seen that when Downtown Disney and Buena Vista Street reopened here just following the stay-at-home orders, they did articulate that, hey, even if you have a vaccine, even if you're fully vaccinated, we're still requiring masks during this time, and kind of having a very clear policy on that. Obviously, as vaccines maybe become more prominent, maybe that changes. But I think right now we're probably not looking to interrogate folks and show proof of vaccine, and instead let's be consistently operating and enforcing those rules. The other good thing, I have been talking with a lot of folks that are actually in the recruiting industry, and we are seeing kind of an uptick on rehiring. And I think that's in some areas that's twofold. We have a lot of attractions that had to let staff go and have a smaller operation because of how they're operating, or maybe because they're closed. And as they've been kind of turning back on, they may not be able to bring everybody back. There may be a contingent of that workforce that doesn't yet feel safe returning to work. And so, that's introduced the opportunity for others that are to kind of fill those roles. But then also just as more positive things are happening, we are seeing kind of that rehiring kick in. I think, the San Antonio Zoo, I think, did a really great, fun, TikTok-y way to advertise all of their roles that they have available. Also seeing a lot of kind of roles Six Flags had come out with to drive revenue, right? Understanding let's focus on these areas that are going to have a really high return as we're bringing staff back. So certainly a lot of positive things there from a hiring front that we're starting to see.
Yeah, definitely. And I was on LinkedIn this morning, and I saw Jon was posted on LinkedIn about some opportunities at Knott's Berry Farm as well. And there's a number of key positions available. So it is definitely exciting and encouraging to see a lot of people that are rehiring. It really creates a hopeful message for tomorrow. So with the vaccine and the rehiring, we're pretty excited about kicking off 2021. We know we got a lot to do to put 2020 behind us, but it is good information. And so, Jon, with that, let's just chat a little bit. You could talk about the rehiring efforts that you guys are doing, but I think we want to start by giving you some time to just tell us a little bit about yourself. I know, like I mentioned, I know that you're super involved with IAPA. I remember being on committees that you were involved with. And most definitely, this great article was recently written in the Orange County Register of really the transformation of Knott's Berry Farm. So we're really hoping to cover some of this. But why don't you just take some time and introduce yourself to our audience? And you mentioned a little bit about growing up in California, but I'll just let you kind of share your story with us.
All right, great. Thanks, Randy. It was interesting hearing Matthew say that he had applied for a job and got turned down, because we share that in common. I actually applied to Disneyland when I was 17 and got turned down the first time. Luckily for me, I came back 6 years later and reapplied, and they hired me as a ride operator or an attractions host, I should say, when the new Fantasyland was open. And I've been in this industry for almost 38 years now, 33 of it at Disneyland, and then the last 5 of it here at Knott's Berry Farm, and hopefully several more years to go. When I talk about my career, and I said I started as a ride operator, I always tell people that I was very blessed with a couple of things. One, I was blessed with very good leaders I came into Disneyland at an interesting time in its history, where some of the original people and people that still had worked with Walt Disney were close to the end of their career. So I was privileged to be able to work with them. And then the other thing I was very blessed with was that leaders pushed me into different businesses. I didn't, even though I entered in the rides area of the business, I didn't stay in that area. My leaders, and I still remember very clearly when I was being transferred into foods. My initial reaction was, I think I had done something wrong, and I always tell people it was the best thing career-wise that ever happened to me, because it started me on this journey that my leaders put me in of being able to experience different businesses. And as we've had a chance to talk, what our business is, it's this wonderful collaboration of all of these different component parts. There's the retailing component, the ride component, the entertainment component, obviously the food component, the cleanliness component. So there's all of these wonderful pieces of our business that makes it so enticing to our guests. And I was blessed with, like I said, the opportunity that my leaders pushed me into each one of those businesses. And I really got to the point where I felt like I was in school almost, taking different classes and becoming a student of the theme park business, where I was learning retail, I was learning revenue businesses and non-revenue businesses, and back of house, backstage businesses, how to keep things clean, how to keep them secure. And I think all of those things certainly were beneficial to me as I transitioned and came over to Knott's Berry Farm, where not only was I responsible for the onstage operations, but gave me the opportunity to kind of overlay some of the support businesses that I really had not been a part of, your finances and your marketings and your HRs and all of those things that pull together, and you have the opportunity to oversee them as a general manager. So I think all of this is, it's all just been a big dress rehearsal for what's going to happen tomorrow. But it's been a great career. And like you said, Randy, I was fortunate to grow up in Southern California, came to Knott's a lot. My parents brought me here. They brought me to SeaWorld. They brought me to the Wax Museum. You're probably not old enough to remember the Japanese Deer Park, SeaWorld, Magic Mountain. So we were fortunate to grow up at that time, which was probably the theme park mecca. Certainly was supplanted by Orlando much later on, but certainly in the beginning, that was kind of ground zero for theme parks. So that's a little bit about me.
Well, that's great, Jon. I one of the things I love about our industry are the leaders that help to grow other leaders, right? I had a similar opportunity when I was at Universal Orlando. If you look at my resume, you'll probably look and wonder, could he just not hold a job? And it wasn't that. It was more that I had the opportunity to move around to some different divisions in the organization and really learn and become kind of a better manager as a result of that. And one of the things we love with these webinar Wednesdays is the opportunity for leaders like yourself to share with us. And I was wondering, attractions today are currently encountering challenges that they wouldn't have thought about a year ago. And I was wondering what you might want to share with kind of other leaders in the attractions industry that you've learned in the last few 6-7 months when we've really been going across this uncharted water.
It's a great question. I think one thing broadly that I've learned is we're important. There's a lot of talk out there right now about what is an essential industry, and I will tell you, I think we're an essential industry. I think entertainment and entertaining people is essential. It's essential for the psychological health of the communities that we're in, and there's a lot of synergies that whether it be with local restaurants or local hotels, or even the communities we're in, and the viability of the cities and the governments in those areas to provide services to the area through the tax bases and the taxes that we create. I really believe we're an essential industry, and that's what the guests tell us. When we first were able to reopen, and I know we'll probably talk more about our outdoor food events, but when we were first able to open that, I cannot tell you how many people came up to us thanking us just for being open, just for giving them a place where they could go with their family and feel like it was safe. And I think that's the other piece is, while we're essential, they needed to feel like what we were doing was safe, and that we followed what was generally felt was COVID-19 protocols around mask wearing and social distancing, and I think that the guests want to socialize, but they want to socialize safely. So I think that's one of the big learnings for me anyway. You sometimes think of entertainment as kind of ancillary, and I more and more think now that entertainment is essential for our health as people. From a guest standpoint, I think I would tell you that what we knew or what we thought we knew is still relevant today. The guests are looking for experiences. They're looking for great placemaking, and I'm fortunate here in Knott's that going back 100 years now, the Knott family and Walter Knott in particular invested in a great environment here. If you've been to Knott's before, the Old West, and it's just a really great environment. And I think the guests are looking for that placemaking, great landscaping. Of course, they're looking for food. And where can they go? I mean, we're surrounded here again in Southern California by some great outdoor shopping opportunities. And, we felt we could be that as well with our food offerings. They want places where they can spend safely with their family and that are unique. And I think we fulfilled a lot of those things for our guests. And I think we're more important than maybe we gave ourselves credit for.
Yeah, Jon, I mean, I think there's a lot of really great things that you did in coming out, reopening when you did last year. Like, one of the things I was really struggling was how attractions like yourself were going to be able to open with the requirements that were in place of, the theme parks not being able to open until they're in a certain level and things like that. How did you tackle that problem of operating differently than you normally would?
Yeah. And I think we had a chance to chat about this a little bit. Is certainly for myself and maybe many others kind of think about the theme park experience as this wonderful mosaic of all these different experiences, and I think I've called it a stew before, and it all kind of comes together, and it's we're more than the sum of our parts with all of these different experiences, rides and shows and entertainment and food, and you pull them all together and you have this wonderful cornucopia of stuff that we call theme park. And unfortunately, in the environment we were in here in California and many places around the country, we were told that we couldn't operate a theme park or we couldn't operate an amusement park. And I think for us, it took us a little while, but once restaurants started to open and shopping started to open, and like I said, we have several RD&Es out here and outdoor shopping malls, we had to wrap our head around this idea of deconstructing ourselves. And wait a minute, while we're this wonderful theme park experience, if you start to break our components down, we're retail shopping, we're food and beverage, we're entertainment. And what that epiphany allowed us to do was then look at the guidelines that the state had given us and saying, you can operate outdoor dining. Okay, we can do that, because we know food. You can operate retail at a restricted capacity. Okay, we can do that. you know. And then on top of that, some businesses that maybe we weren't as involved in, and a couple were, you know, we never had curbside service here. Our online retail presence was very, very limited, and the changing environment was a catalyst for us to move into the online retail business in a way that we had never done before, and our results were at least tenfold what we had done in previous years. Now, some of that obviously were guests were looking for the type of merchandise items that all of us have in our parks. But I think that just changed the dynamic where online shopping, and we can certainly look across our industry and the retail industry and see a lot of businesses that focus on online shopping. But we had literally last year in 2020, we had the best year we've ever had in online retail stores, again, by 10-20 fold.
That is awesome. I love hearing stories like that because we were talking about pent up demand as well earlier. And as a consumer, you know, I get it. I have a lot of kids and they just want, they want to consume things. And these are the things that they really want. I remember one of my daughters is like, Dad, I just want butterbeer. Yeah. It's like, how do we get butterbeer? You know, she was missing tremendously that experience. And I couldn't agree more with what you said about being an essential business, because it's the livelihood of our family, obviously, because I've grown up in this industry and I've raised my children in this industry. But outside of that, it's just great therapeutic fun. It's just what we need to do. And heck, if I can go to a grocery store, why can't I go to a zoo, an aquarium, a theme park?
Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you a funny story to that. We when we first opened our online curbside business, you know, we didn't know what was going to happen. And the very first day, our food and beverage leaders say, "Hey, why could I put boysenberry pies online too?" And we did that, and all of a sudden guests were buying boysenberry pies, and I'm sitting out in the parking lot and somebody holds up her pie as she's driving by and yells, "Thank you." You know?
It's, you know? Yeah, I remember early on reading posts about movie theaters that couldn't open, but were selling popcorn in their parking lot. You know, this is just, I mean, there's these things that are staples, like funnel cakes. I would be there every day buying a funnel cake. I live in Nashville, by the way, so I can't come by too often, but I would be there and get a funnel cake because that's just what I want. Like, it's what I love about Knott's Berry Farm. I love walking around. You know, I went there the day the day I proposed to my wife. We went to Knott's Berry Farm because it was like the perfect place. It meant a lot to both of us when we went. And so, you know, I think I was thinking about this before, and from a guest experience, I think you really captured something very interesting, which is the guests just want to be there in that environment. I think they understand that there's some things they can't do. They can't ride on the log ride, or they can't ride some of the rides. You know, but just being there and being present and walking around and doing what you said, enjoying food, that was really great. The Taste of Calico was an awesome event. I think we read that you had over a third of a million people, like 300 and something thousand people visited.
Yeah. We did four events from mid-July through the earlier part of December, when the state went back into a stay-at-home order, and you know, each one built on the other. We didn't know what we had, so when we started, it was let's put together a food event. We had developed COVID-19 protocols for how to operate, but we had never, you know, and we were hoping, you know, at some point to open the theme park and we would be able to deploy these COVID-19 protocols that we had developed. So this gave us not only an opportunity to generate some revenue, but it also gave us a great opportunity to implement some of these protocols and see how they worked in a real world environment. And so when we first went out there, we started with 2 weekends and we sold them out within a few days and opened it up for some additional events. But it really gave us, one, a chance to generate some revenue, and it gave us a chance to stay relevant in our marketplace. Everything was closed, and that ability to stay relevant to the market, stay relevant to our pass holders, and then to test drive, if you will, those COVID-19 protocols that we all have become familiar with. But if you think about 6 months ago, they were all new, and we didn't exactly know how guests would respond to things or not respond to them. And so that was a good training ground for us going forward.
Hey, Jon, one of the things that attraction operators historically have been good at is operating an attraction, right? I can have a museum, I have a ride, and I can get people through that efficiently. And kind of food and beverage and merchandise has been more kind of, just a thing that they did on the side. And so one of the things that we've heard from some attractions when they started to reopen was, yeah, I'm going to reopen the attraction, but yeah, our food and beverage location, it's staying shut. And obviously that was the opposite of what you did. So what is it that you think gave you the courage or the ability to say, hey, I can run food and beverage in this world where this pandemic exists and be able to be successful? Like, what are some of the things that others might learn from how you were able to bring that to life, where they might be still afeared of being able to do that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I would tell you that I think if anybody is still thinking about food in the context of our business as just fuel, that you're not thinking about it right anymore. And I think you really have to be thinking about food as an integral part of the experience. Now, luckily, in the Knott's lore and in our history, it started with food. It started with boysenberries and it started with fried chicken. So food is definitely a part of our DNA, and we attract an awful lot of guests. And I think, Randy, you said it. We had very few guests that came and said, hey, where are the rides? I really wish. They were happy to be in the environment. They were happy to be enjoying food with their family. I mean, food is just a basic part of how we interact as human beings, and the importance of food and the food experience. This experience for us has accelerated that. And accelerated the importance of food. I was lucky at my time at Disney that they went through that evolution too, where food became much more of a focus of the overall experience. It's certainly much more of a focus in our overall experience here at Knott's Berry Farm. And I would tell anybody in this business, if you've got food and beverage offerings, that can be an integral part and an exciting part, and attract a whole lot of people that don't ride rides. But your environment and the opportunity to have food should be important, and just don't think about it as just fuel anymore, where someone can just fuel up and then go on a ride.
So I would assume that as you kind of embrace food, you also bring along, like it's no longer that we're just operating kind of this hot dog cart. Like, we have the professionals that have the skill set and can one, prepare these amazing dishes, but then it can also execute it safely in a world where we need to be wearing masks and have plexiglass and stuff like that. So just by adding in that other layer and already having that great resource of excellent chefs, excellent food service staff, kind of is the secret sauce to making that happen when others might be afraid to.
Yeah, I think you would, Matthew, you think about it, in some ways no different than you would think about a ride. I mean, how am I going to maintain social distancing? How am I going to make sure that things are clean? How am I going to make sure that the guests feel safe? How am I going to make sure that my associates, my employees feel like they can operate this in a safe manner? So you kind of broadly approach it the same way, and certainly within all of our jurisdictions, there are health boards and health departments that have rules and regulations around that. But you approach food as professionally as you would approach any other aspect of your business. And I think and certainly that means, what are your facilities like, and are they up to the task, equipment wise? But do you have professionals? Do you have chefs on board? Do you have pastry people and bakers and people that this is their skill set, that guests are always going to love a great hot dog or a great hamburger or chicken tenders. Are you doing those items in the best way possible with the highest quality, and you're executing those in a high value way? They're going to like that funnel cake. They're going to like the chicken mole on jasmine rice you got there. So all of those things kind of add breadth to the experience. But to your point, Matthew, you've got to have the professional people there, and you have to have the training behind your hourly employees that are executing these things, and because food is every bit as important in my mind as any other part of our experience.
I'm so hungry for this boysenberry breaded chicken tender on a waffle with fire honey right now. I can't stand it. Jon, we have a lot of questions coming in. I just want to bounce around a little bit. So we were going to talk a little bit about the guest experience, and then we shift to the employee experience, and then kind of wrap up with some of the company experience. But there's a lot to go on right here. I do want to mention, you said something great about the professionalism of the chefs, and Mark from parkvault.net definitely highlighted that in the Q&A, that that parks are benefiting from very professional high-end food. And I think I was going to ask you what the takeaway was going to be from these events, but I pretty much heard it. Going forward, food, just like a ride or an attraction, is set aside with this professional this professional presentation, where the guests are expecting these foods and they're willing to buy it. We know that. I think there was a 1.2, or I figured like over every single person that visited your events, they bought 4 different tastings. I mean, that's a lot of tastings. So we know that the appetite is definitely there, to use that word in multiple ways. I do want to call out that Sarah mentioned that she and her husband went to your event, and there were tables spaced out everywhere, and really creating that safe environment was really important. So that's a good shout out there. Matthew, I think you had a question coming in as well from, I think, Travis.
Yeah, so kind of jumping into that employee experience and the recruiting that we had talked about earlier that we're seeing happening in some areas. How are you recruiting, Jon, in a COVID world? And Travis was specifically asking, are you promoting the COVID protocols that you've put in place as a recruiting tool? Is that one of the things to help encourage people to join the team? And are you offering any additional incentives for candidates?
First of all, I really have to give Cedar Fair credit here, and while certainly when we closed down, there weren't a lot of hours and opportunities for our casual or our seasonal workforce, and we did have to furlough some of our our part-time individuals here, but Cedar Fair really made a commitment to its full-time workforce, and we did not lay off any full-time associates the entire time through all of this. We've held on to our full-time people, where we've been loyal to them, and obviously we've been able to provide them with work and pay and a purpose, and I think that's been important. When I think about our team, our corporate team, led by Richard Zimmerman and Tim Fisher, our COO, the moment this hit, they were focused on how are we going to be able to reopen, and what kind of COVID protocols do we need to put in place. Obviously, we took a lot of our guidance from the CDC, but we also retained professionals and consultants and medical consultants on how to put together these protocols. So like I said, by the time we rolled around to even mid-May, when we started to open Mrs. Knott's Chicken Dinner Restaurant, we had protocols already developed in place, We had training already developed, so all of our associates here go through COVID-19 training on what to do and what to recognize if they feel sick or anything like that. We do temperature checks for everybody. I get temperature checked every day when I come to work on property. There are quarantining guidelines that we have if anybody feels symptomatic of anything, and I think we've done, and Cedar Fair has done just an outstanding job, and I think our industry probably overall has done an outstanding job of adopting protocols and sticking with them to make sure that not only our guests would be safe, but our employees would be safe as well. So I think, the one thing we did not do a lot of, obviously, during this time was hire. So we did have some attrition, and people moved or whatever the reasons, and I think we clearly see the light at the end of the tunnel. And if we are going to hit the ground running, and we need to make sure that we have the right people in the right places. And so that's why I think we're starting now, and we've got a pretty aggressive plan to start to hire up and get people into positions. So hopefully, late spring, early summer, sometime in that third quarter of the year, we're ready to open and go, and we can hit the ground running.
That's great. I mean, it certainly looks like, you are always looking one day into the future, or maybe several days into the future, and you're readying for that. So maybe I'll shift a little bit. Can you help us understand some of the things that you're looking for 2, 3, 4 weeks into the future now that you're kind of starting to prepare for?
Yeah, it's I will tell you the hardest thing, and I'm sure everybody can empathize with this, the hardest thing about this, certainly in California, has been the uncertainty, and the inability to plan. I mean, even with the last rescinding of the stay-at-home order here in California, not even a week earlier, I had talked to our local health authorities and said, hey, can you give me any insight in when the stay-at-home order may be rescinded? And they said, you're probably looking at 3 or 4 weeks. And the following Monday, the governor pulled back. And so it's been hard in many cases. And I don't have, obviously, the insight to all the jurisdictions that are, across the country and around the world. But certainly here in California, that ability to anticipate, 3, 4, 5 weeks, a month down the road has been a challenge in just the uncertainty of where we are. You mentioned, or maybe it was Randy that mentioned, vaccines. Our current reopening protocols don't have any consideration for vaccines even in them. It's still based on case rates and positivity rates and things like that. And certainly those will be impacted by, more vaccines and just more people that have been exposed to the virus. But there's nothing built into those protocols right now. So, and the other thing I would tell you is, because of that uncertainty, it's made us nimble, and it's made us to be able to pivot. When we closed down after when our food event in December got closed down on December 6th, that next weekend we retooled ourselves and opened as a retail event. And so we couldn't offer food like we had been doing before, but we were able to pivot and open ourselves as a retail event. And that's kind of been our thing. We are going to take whatever rules we're given and whatever guidelines we're given as far as what we can operate, and how can we and what can we operate within those guidelines, and how quickly can our team pivot and do the things that we need to do to be able to reopen and offer those events. The other thing I would tell you from a food standpoint, so we're getting right now to be able to offer our guests another food event. What the downtime did give us the opportunity to do is we're a couple of menus ahead now. So we're already thinking beyond this food event. If we need to do another one, we have an idea about what we would do. If we're able to open the park, we have an idea about how we would do that. And given the fact that we don't know when that date is, we have an idea about how we can end one and start the other relatively seamlessly. So those are the kind of things that we're talking about right now. But I would also tell you, as we start to come out of this, our company overall is what's 22 going to be like? What's 23 going to be like? Because we've got to start getting back into that forward-thinking mode of how we're going to start to get back to whatever normal is, and then attract guests into the future.
Wow, I love this idea of what's coming next. I mean, obviously, we didn't know when COVID was happening. Matthew and myself, our team, we were literally in Southern California at an IAPA event when everything closed. Like we went to Universal, we were expected to go to Six Flags, and we had a plan. We went to Disneyland Resort, and I think it was one of the last days. And not knowing that things were going to shut down, of course, no one had an action plan. And I think going forward, knowing that we're going to do things differently is really interesting to see, and being ready to roll that out. There's something I want to talk to you about, and it has to it's this convergence of like employee experience and guest experience and even corporate. You have a new ride that is coming. It's a dark ride, and I remember this ride as a kid, right? And I'm going to share my screen, but what lessons and what changes are you incorporating into this new attraction as you relaunch this experience? I'm just curious because I'm certain that changes were made to whether it's the queue or whatnot. I'm just wondering what you're incorporating into the Return to the Fair ride coming in that Roaring 20 section of your park.
Yeah. So Knott's Berry Farm Knott's Berry Tales Return to the Fair. So that was slated to open, last May for our 100th anniversary celebration, and of course we weren't able to do that. So the ride itself is, we wanted to bring back that story, and in something that goes back into our history. And we've had people, ask us before, boy, wouldn't it be great to bring that story back? But we wanted to bring it back in a different way, not just, it was a traditional dark ride. And of course, Iron Reef was more of a media-based dark ride. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to, again, combine those things. And while it's still media-based, but there's also dimensional elements to it. So it still feels in some way like you're in a traditional dark ride with sets and props and lighting and all of those things. It's interactive. There's a gaming component to it as well. I tell you, I've ridden it a number of times. It is as enjoyable not playing the game as it is interacting and playing the game. I will tell you, the one thing that the time has given us is we're still playing with it, and we're still, boy, wouldn't it be great if we added a little something there and a little something there and painted that little different color and added some lighting here. So we've been having the opportunity to plus it up, this whole time. And I can say with an awful lot of confidence that I think guests are going to love it. And two, they are going to get a better ride whenever it is we open than they would have if we had opened it when we originally scheduled it last May.
That's great, Jon. One of the things I also had heard when you were talking was the embracing being nimble and being able to react quickly and to rethink some of these things. I wanted to ask, is that something that has just always been in the culture of Knott's and Cedar Fair, or did you have to kind of really work to kind of get that into the mindset of folks and get folks to not just be doom and gloom and not be able to see kind of a path forward? Kind of how did you gain that skill of being nimble at Knott's Berry Farm?
Yeah, good question. You know, I've been fortunate here because my regional vice president, Rafi Kapralian, he's stationed here. So this whole time that the lockdown has been that was going on, he was here with me, and it gave us lots of time to kind of brainstorm what we would do. But I think that sense that we can do anything, that we can be nimble, and that we have the team here and the structure here. I think from a corporate standpoint, Cedar Fair entrusts a lot of faith in the individual parks and the individual sites to be able to understand their market and what they can do and what they can't do. And we were just lucky that we had the capabilities here that we could pivot quickly. I've got a great team here, and I talked a lot about the psychology of the guests of being open and being able to come here. There's a lot to be said for our psychology and giving us, a goal to go after and being able to open. When you're in the business of providing guest service and making people happy, and that's taken away from you and you can't do it, there's a motivation there. I want to get back in the game. I want to start seeing people laugh again. I want to see people smile again. I want to hear people say thank you. I want to be able to thank people for coming. That was a great motivator for us to get back in the game, that we could welcome guests back in and feel that sense of satisfaction that comes with entertaining people.
Awesome. Jon, as we start to close here, because we shortened this to an hour, and I'm sure we could all talk forever. We've had continuing great questions, and I know I'm glad you mentioned leadership at the very beginning. One of the things that really stuck out for me is having great leaders, and I can say the same thing about the leadership teams that I was able to have honored to work with, being kind of pushed in different direction and trying new things. And I've heard the same thing about you. I've heard that you are a fantastic leader. My friend Claudette's mentioned it. I have a lot of friends, Scott Lyons, we have mutual friends as well from some of our Disney days, and some of our friends are on the chat here. I look up to you as being one of those leaders, and we really appreciate you being here. But I also wanted to switch gears for a moment about leadership in another area of your life and things that you're involved with. And as we close, I discovered that you are you're part of an organization called Game Changer, and I want to give you an opportunity to talk about this, because I am floored about this this charity, Game Changer. I mean, well, I'll just let you talk about it for a moment, about what you do with Game Changer.
Yeah, I appreciate that so much, Randy. And I think, again, one of the things that's great about our industry is we give back to our communities, both large and small, and whether that's monetarily or donating our time and our talent. And Game Changer, I had a good friend of mine that we both served on the local Make-A-Wish organization board, and his name is Jim Carroll, and his son had cancer, and I don't know exactly what type of cancer, but suffice it to say that his son Taylor was in a number of hospitals, ended up, I believe, having a bone marrow transplant, and he's healthy today. But one of the things, and Jim was in tech all his life, and one of the things that Jim found was when his son was in the hospital, that video games, even the video games of that time, helped to take people's mind off their sickness. And whether they were in an infusion center or just sitting in their room, I mean, you can imagine as a young child being, not knowing what's going on and being a little bit scared that a video game can provide a level of distraction. And as technology changed, there's probably a lot of you that are out there that either play Xbox Live and you integrate with all your friends. I know my son does at home. I can hear him laughing and talking to his friends as he plays video games. Imagine a cancer patient that's sitting in a hospital that can't leave the hospital for 3 months and can't see his friends and can't see his schoolmates, the power that video games and video game technology has to bring the outside world into their hospital rooms, whether it's through VR or, and there's a picture of Jim there on the right and his son Taylor that is sitting next to him. And as they've developed, Jim and his team developed a whole new set of technology that he's rolling out into hospitals to really provide these patients, as well as the hospital staffs themselves, the opportunity to use technology to ease the pain and suffering of these cancer patients in the hospitals. And it's a great organization. It's small but mighty, and certainly any support that anybody out there could give this organization would really change the life of these sick kids that are in these children's hospitals.
Jon, thank you so much for your involvement in that organization. It's definitely near and dear to my heart. I mentioned this, we were chatting yesterday, but my daughter's dear friend just passed away from an inoperable brain tumor. And so I'll be making a donation on behalf of their family. But I would definitely encourage everyone, we're going to put the link up, a donation of any size. This is especially with COVID right now and even the further isolation, please consider making a donation to this great charity. As an appreciation for our time, we're going to be doing that as well. But thank you so much, Jon, for joining us and for being involved and sharing your story today. We're excited to go and visit Knott's Berry Farm as soon as we're ready to open. And we're excited to continue our webinar series, everyone. This is a QR code to download some of our most updated kind of information from Gateway. If you want to get any more information, please sign up on these links here, and we'll send you some emails and this recording so you can see and share it with other team members that maybe couldn't be here today. And last but not least, we'll be here in 2 weeks as we discuss making preparations for spring break. I know we're all excited with spring break around the corner, those places that can open. There's some things we got to do to get ready. I'm going away on spring break. I'm getting my family down to Orlando to visit Matthew and see how the sun's doing down there. But this is going to be a great session as we talk about getting ready for that. Jon, on behalf of all of us, thank you so much. We really appreciate you being here today.
My pleasure.
Yeah, it's great. Say hi to your team and everybody for me that I know. Hi, Claudette and friends. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today. It was a real pleasure. So we'll see you all in a couple of weeks, everyone.
Have a wonderful afternoon. Thanks, everyone.